In this article, we're going to lay the groundwork for Sandler training's IR theory. David Sandler liked to introduce the concept with the phrase, "There's a difference between who you are and what you are." The basic meaning of the phrase is that there is a distinction between who you are as a person and what you do, or your roles you play in life. The I stands for identity or self-concept. The R stands for the various roles a person may play: husband, wife, salesperson, weightlifter, student, etc. The fact is that most people cannot separate their self-identity from the roles they play. The two become fused to the extent that one's roles become one's unconscious identity. If you were walking down the street today and you were to ask someone who he or she is, most people will define who they are, their identity, with how well they do their roles, or they will give you what roles they play. This is because as children, the child ego state in the vast majority of cases is imprinted by the critical parent we learned about in a previous video. And we haven't talked about stroke hunger yet, so let's do that right now. Stroke hunger is the deep desire within us all to receive positive strokes, affirmation, acceptance, or love from authority figures to validate who we are. In a certain sense, one's self-worth is dictated by how well this stroke hunger is met by a parental or authority figure. As we talked about earlier, the child, not the ego state, but the real child, or adult for that matter, who is under the injunctions or commands and attributions like "you are a dunce," "you're not so bright" of a critical parent receives strokes conditionally. That means that certain conditions must be met by the child to receive love, much like a dolphin in an aquarium only receives treats when it meets the demands of its trainer. And here I thought we were human, not some sort of lab rat. The problem with this is that the child can only feel good about itself in relation to how well he or she pleases the critical parent ego state of an authority figure. This is the point. The child learns that self-worth, identity, self-concept cannot come from any inherent worth within him or herself. The child is only worth what those in authority deem him or her to be. In transactional analysis, the child or adult in this predicament is said to be in the adaptive child ego state. This means that the child, or adult for that matter, will live out a lifelong script of constantly adapting to the dictates of an outside party, seeking to please, seeking to go along to get along. But more importantly, his or her identity will be determined and permanently fused with how well he or she pleases the authority. In other words, he or she will never be able to separate his or her identity from the various roles they play in life, and more importantly, how well they play the roles. So why is this important? This brings us full circle back to the quote we started with. You can only perform in your roles in a manner consistent with how well you see yourself conceptually. The fact is, not everyone grows up with affirming, loving parents or authority figures. And let's face it, as a child, what parents say about you or attributions are swallowed whole, digested, and penetrate to the very core of who you are psychologically. And when the stroke hunger pangs of the child are only fed if certain conditions are met, then the child's self-concept is only as strong as oftentimes the crumbs of conditions and attributes allow. Most of the world is trapped in a philosophy which comes from the critical parent ego state script. It goes something like this: do, have, be. If I just do the right things, follow the rules of the critical parent, then I will have love and then be happy with myself. This critical parent train is really on the tracks to nowhere because the order is all wrong. The free child ego state, on the other hand, is the script for success. This is because the free child receives its self-worth from the nurturing parent ego state of its parents. What this means is that the free child receives love unconditionally, so it develops an I am okay life position, and we're going to do a lot of stuff on life positions later on. And because he or she is okay, this child isn't fazed in the least by rejection, because metaphorically he or she has no parent to please to feel loved in the first place. That's because love is unconditional. Life rolls off the free child like water off a duck's back. Treats weren't dispensed because of good role performance, good grades, being good at sports, etc. So the correct order is be, do, have. And below is the Sandler training success triangle. It basically depicts the be, do, have concept. I'll explain it briefly. Real success is dictated by a person's attitude, or what we said earlier as a self-concept, a strong self-concept. So attitude here relates to the strong self-concept or belief in oneself. In a sales role and in roles in general, the 3 points of the attitude triangle would be belief in self, belief in company, and belief in industry. But belief in self is apropos for any role. The point is that success is conceptual first and foremost. It is a strong belief that I can do it. It is a strong belief that my company brings something of extreme value to the market. It is also the belief that the area in which I work is really worthy of doing. The strengths of these core beliefs dictate how well a person will do in one's roles within that arena, just like the belief in one's own self dictates whether one will rise to great heights or dwell on the fringes of success. So like I said before, attitude or self-concept is a critical starting point. If we go down to the behavior point on the triangle, we'll see how crucial attitude really is. The fact of the matter is that how you see yourself, how you feel about what you do, determines what behaviors you're willing to take and which ones you actually do take. In other words, I can tell how much you believe in what you do by your behaviors. So the problem isn't with the product or the market, it's the level of belief that stands behind it that makes the difference. Excuses are merely the product of lack of belief in self, lack of belief in the company or product or industry. The last point on the triangle is technique. You can learn techniques for almost any role you want to play in life. The problem is that most training programs don't address the real issue. You can give a person all the tried and tested techniques, but if he doesn't do the behaviors because of lack of belief, all the technique in the world won't make one bit of difference. So back to transactional analysis. Most people are trapped in the paralysis of needing the validation of the critical parent. The reason for the critical parent order of do, have, be is because the child or adult is in slavish dependence on approval of the parent. This person is trying to drive a car that is psychologically out of gasoline. This dependence manifests itself in life by taking no action that could bring disapproval that this person has learned from experience that it must please others to derive its self-worth. So it's almost like psychological chains. What a complete shame and abhorrent lie. In the next issue, we'll explore why you're a 10, self-concept wise, and how we can separate the false correlation of identity and roles to really make a difference in the actions you take. Because as we saw in the Sandler success triangle, most people are out there learning techniques, but they're not working on their what they call the I side or their identity side that controls how much behavior they're going to take. And if they don't take any behavior, it doesn't matter how much technique they learn. So the next issue will be a really important video on that. See you next time.